everyone. My name is Rufus Thibodeaux, and welcome to another episode of Promise and Purpose, where we talk about the transformative power of God's Word and how that links to us discovering our purpose and unlocking our untapped potential. And today I'm here with Danny Alford, and we're going to continue our conversation about how aligning yourself with the promises of God leads to a deeper understanding of your purpose and the potential that lies on the inside of you. So, Danny, thanks, man, for hanging out today. You know what? Camouflage is part of my brand. I'm surprised that I don't have it on today. So probably the only day I do. Actually, I have camouflage pants on today, though. So,
Hey,
so
looking good though. Looking
yeah, I
good.
appreciate it. Appreciate it. So it's interesting, man. My wife is really heavy into fashion. She was a stylist for about 30 years, and she actually wrote a book that's really cool too. But anyway, the idea is that pick out what you like to wear, what you feel confident in, because your clothes send a message. And
Yeah.
I find myself just wearing black all the time because that's just, you know what I mean? I just feel good in black. I mean, do you
Yes,
like
sir.
shopping for clothes, man?
I do from time to time. My wife is big on shopping for clothes, and she's
Gotcha.
big on letting me know what's a go and a no go in my closet.
You know what? Wives do that. That's kind of, yeah, that's their role. Also, I find that the voice of the Lord sounds amazingly like my wife's voice very often. So there you
Sir.
go. So I'm a good listener. So cool, man. Well, thanks again for joining me. Let's jump in, man. Why don't you start by maybe just introducing yourself and talk a little bit about your background and kind of the work that you do.
Absolutely, my pleasure. First of all, thank you for allowing me to be on the show with you today.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
always geeked to be able to have a good conversation, a good family conversation.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
So again, my name is Danny Alford. I was born in Atlanta, Georgia. I was born down
Nice.
south.
Okay.
But I grew up in South Bend, Indiana, the home of Notre Dame.
Okay.
So
Nice.
I went to school in Southern Indiana at Bloomington, uh, IU, Indiana University. I was a member of the School of Music there for jazz studies.
Nice.
Enjoyed that, and then I found myself. I got out of that and went into the service. Served my country for about 8 years,
Okay.
and then moved on back to stateside after I was finished with that. Right now, by occupation, I'm a graphic designer.
Okay.
Well, it's an interesting story how I got into that, but maybe we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. So for you, the camouflage is legitimate. That's part of what
Oh
you
yes,
do, huh? Okay, nice. It's not a fashion statement. So what
yes.
branch of the military were you involved in?
I was in the army.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yes, sir.
I was talking the other day, I was at a men's prayer. We were talking, there was one guy from, I think, the Army, one guy from the Marines. I thought maybe somebody else as well, but we were talking about how I mean, there is, I mean, big picture, they're brother, kind of a brotherhood, but underneath there's some like sibling
Oh yeah.
rivalries, kind of. Have you experienced that?
Um, Not so much when I was in the service, and I'm an only child by family wise, but in the
Okay.
service it was more brotherhood than it was any type of competition. At least the
Oh,
time
really?
when.
Okay, cool. Well, that's cool. So, all right, so let's dig into this, man. Let's talk a little bit about your journey. So like how have you personally dealt with feelings of, like unfulfillment or disconnection from your purpose? And what strategies help you to overcome those kinds of challenges?
Great question. Before I jump into that, I just have
Yeah,
to say this. Cannot leave this out.
yeah.
I'm married to a wonderful woman by the name of Tawana Alford. She
Nice.
part of my ground base. We have five beautiful children, four amazing young men, one who's in the Marine Corps, and one beautiful young lady who is an artist, a vocalist in her own right. So I definitely want to make sure that I mention my family and my wife, which hold me down.
So
Keep me
so
grounded.
I'm glad you did. So we'll definitely get into that. I got four kids, so you beat by one, but four guys and one girl, so it's two girls in the household and five guys, basically, right?
Yes, they're
Okay,
all going and out on their own now, and
got
that is
it.
two of those are mine from previous marriage. Three of those
Gotcha.
are hers, but
Okay.
they're all ours.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, so we'll definitely get into that. So, yeah, so let's talk about your journey, man. How have you dealt with those feelings of unfulfillment and disconnection from your purpose and passion?
Well, I try to really just keep it simple. So I keep at the forefront of my mind just two things, and I'm gonna let you know right away when as I answer these questions. We're talking about the promises and how our faith is integral, and for me, that's really um, primarily all I know.
Yeah.
You know, I'd like to say I'm the big CEO type and I've got it all together over there, but for me, what has really been my light and my foundation has been my faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. So me dealing with those times of, feeling disconnected, maybe
Yeah.
it just came about by me just being honest in prayer with the
Okay.
Father. I
Yeah.
was honest in prayer and I kept things simple.
Okay. Okay. No, what's nice about that, what I hear in you, so you basically grew up in church. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we have that in common. So my father was a pastor. Actually, he led me to the Lord when I was 8 years old. So I've been born again for like 47 years. He died about 8 years ago, which was really, man, that was a tough situation. Interestingly enough, I only know it was 8 years ago because I read his obituary like for the first time about 3 weeks ago. And because I just couldn't, you know what I mean? I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that about growing up in the church and the lingo and the scriptures and you kind of know what somebody else told you and I'm doing this because Pastor so and so said this. Have you? I mean, how have you? Are you still super involved in church right now?
I am very much so.
Okay. I know that one of the things in church, speaking of the whole disconnection from your passion, purpose, all that, you know, mental health was not really a big discussion. I don't know. I'm curious to know what your experience has been, but if you've had problems, if you even had them, I mean, first of all, it's how you doing. Well, I'm blessed, highly favored. That's it. People answering the phone, praise the Lord. You know what I mean? I mean, that's kind of the background I came from. But was that your experience that when people have problems that it's like, hey, you're not praying enough. I mean, you need to do your confessions more. You need to get in the word. That's a problem. What has your experience been around that? But were people talking about mental health issues?
Oh, well, definitely not. When I
Okay.
was growing up in church, and although I grew up in church, church at the time was not growing in me until later. But
Yeah, I hear you. That's another
none, none,
story. Okay.
nonetheless, there wasn't really a lot of talk, really no talk at all around mental health. And my experience, for the most part, was pretty much like you mentioned. Oh,
Yeah.
you got to pray. You got to, remain steadfast. You got to hold on to God's unchanging hand. But as a young man, especially as a young boy, God's hand, I don't even see His hand. What do you mean? How do I do that?
Right.
So I don't back in, growing up in my time, as I'm sure you can identify,
Yeah.
that was really an absent conversation.
100%. You also mentioned that you're from the South, kind of grew up in the Midwest. That's kind of my story. I was born in New Orleans, but I went to school. So I grew up in Minnesota, but I was born in New Orleans, went to school there, and that was really my first experience around, just the South, which was like,
Mm.
man, that was crazy. I mean, because I was accustomed to being really the only black guy in the class, sometimes in a school. You know what I mean? And there, everybody looked like me. I could ask anybody where to get a haircut. Everybody knew how to pronounce my last name. It was crazy. So how so you were born or did you grow up in Atlanta? Or do you
I
live
actually was, I was born in Atlanta. I was only there for maybe the first 2.5 years of my
okay,
life. And then from there, I traveled in the military with my parents. My parents were both, um, well, my mom, she was in the military.
okay,
So, I traveled with her until we ended up in South Bend,
got it.
with.
Okay, gotcha. So can you share I'm kind of shifting gears a little bit here, but can you share a specific instance where you maybe struggle to apply a biblical principle in your, kind of everyday life?
Oh
And
man.
okay, you sound like you got a big old long list. Okay, how many? So just yeah, tell me about that. And I'd like to know what you did to ultimately overcome those kinds of challenges. Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's I don't necessarily like to use the word struggle, but I know we deal with challenges every day on the day.
absolutely. Yeah.
So, but probably my most significant struggle was making that transition through the growing years, through all the stages of adolescence,
Okay.
teenager, young adult, and just being able to deal with the biblical truth of sanctification and holiness and
Okay.
living life that's pleasing to the Lord, not being all over the place. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah. I do know what you're saying.
That was a challenge for me, a very big challenge because certain doors were opened early in my life, not by my choice.
Yeah.
And at that young age, I didn't know how to, deal with those things. And it wasn't until I got much older
Yeah.
that I realized that those doors being open weren't my fault. It wasn't like I went to the door and opened it up,
Yeah, yeah.
but it was my responsibility, unfortunately, my responsibility now to deal with those doors, what they were. So for me, just as brothers, as men,
Yeah.
growing up, we struggle with our, our sexuality, meaning, trying to stay out of trouble with the ladies.
Yes, 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 100%, 100%. And man, it's interesting because nowadays, I mean, things are way more liberal than when I was growing up, when you were growing up. I mean, in fact, man, I remember thinking to myself, man, I mean, those things I was scared that you know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna, man, I don't want to end up like Samson. You know what I mean? I don't want to be, shake myself and I don't have the strength anymore. You know what I mean? But now, and even I think around parents and stuff too. I mean, and of course, I think culture has something to do with this too. But there's things I was scared to do. I mean, I wouldn't do around my parents or to my parents or say to my parents. It's like, man,
Oh, absolutely.
and I remember, growing up raising our kids, my wife used to say, you're being too mean. They're gonna be scared of you. I said, I want to be scared of me. I want to be scared because eventually that sort of turns into respect. You know what I mean, down the line. But
Yes.
yeah. So, but I'm curious about that for you, man. What role did your community play in your journey? I mean, how important was community? And then, like today, how do you actively engage with fellow believers and to sort of keep your connection with God growing and relationship with other guys?
Yeah, I believe that's so important for me growing up, and just all my life. Community has played such a tremendous role in my life,
Yeah,
especially in those formative years,
yeah,
uh, growing up as a young boy in the church, and then, moving on up and forward through life. Um, Community has a way of, eh, I shouldn't generalize it, but I was fortunate to have a healthy community
yeah,
that consisting of my parents and certain family members and individuals in the church,
yeah.
that they acted as that splint on my life to keep me on that straight and narrow road.
Gotcha.
There was comfort there. Um, there was, to a degree, a sense of belonging.
Okay.
So that was helpful. But the most important thing is that community provided for me protection,
Okay.
and it provided me some type of groundwork that I can begin to use to walk on, to go through life.
Yeah.
And even now, community plays such a big, even a bigger portion to me as an adult,
Yeah.
because as believers, I'm able to fellowship with, other believers. I have a very intimate circle that helps inspire me,
Yeah.
corrects me,
Right.
challenges me, does all those things. And I think that is very necessary. That's something that we shouldn't put on the shelf when we quote unquote become grown. It's something that we should even reach out and embrace more when we become adults, because it's so important.
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of times it could be, make or break or life or death. I mean, think about, it reminds me, whenever I think about community, I think about the guy in the Bible who his friends brought him to Jesus, but they couldn't get to him, so they had to let him down through the roof. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And all of the situations, even in my life, that I wouldn't have made it if my buddies, my community, and my wife in particular, my wife is my best friend. And
Yes.
like I mentioned sort of jokingly earlier, I don't know if I was sharing this with you, but maybe I did, but how the voice of God sounds like my wife's voice a lot.
Yes,
But
sir.
man, I had been lost without, her saying, hey, man, this is where you need to go. This is where you need to go. And so you need that community. I agree 100%.
I
Um,
definitely, I
yeah,
feel like, my belief, especially now in these later years, is that um relationship is everything in life. Relationships
yeah,
are everything in life. With Relationships are what gives life its meaning. Without the relationship, this Zoom that we're talking on, this computer
Yeah,
that we're using, all this stuff
yeah,
doesn't make a difference without being centered in the context of relationships. So that's a big thing that community, helps us learn, develop in, be
yeah,
it proficient in all those things.
yeah, 100%. I agree. I agree. So, so you mentioned a few different things, the military and graphic design, and how did you ultimately find your purpose? And what advice would you give to people that are still struggling, to find a deeper sense of meaning and satisfaction in their lives?
Well, that's a very, very big
Yeah,
subject area. Because you mentioned that word purpose, and automatically that sends shivers in most people's bones because it's
yeah,
such a big concept, that one thing. But what I've learned throughout my time and growing is that be patient with myself, understand that the ebbs and the flows and the bends of my life is going to change at different times.
sure,
And so I look at it in terms as what are my assignments in life,
yeah,
because they will come and go, start and end. But ultimately, my ultimate purpose in life is just to be in relationship with God and to glorify Him with my life and to help others as much as possible while I'm here on this earth. That's what I feel like my purpose is. And whichever vehicle I happen to use at any given time,
sure.
then I use that.
Sure. So in that process, have you ever had periods where you felt sort of spiritually stagnated? Your growth may be stunted, and then how did you navigate those feelings?
Whew. Definitely had quite a few, many times of feeling stagnant,
Yeah.
kind of having, I guess, what they call it, analysis paralysis, or just being paralyzed.
Right. Yeah.
It comes about. It's really unexpected at times, and there's no one way that happens. Sometimes it happens because of your own fear.
Sure.
Sometimes it happens because of a lack of discipline. Sometimes it comes from a lack of understanding, or even, in times of my life, in times past, yeah, it came because of what the sin that I allowed at that time, in my life, and just feeling like, well, I can't go back to God. And it took a father's love
Yeah.
letting me know, hey, no, this is the time to come to me. When you feel like you most need to run, that's the time to all the more to come to me. Because let me tell you, there's no other place that we can go or that you can go to get the internal help that you need.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I had those moments of stagnation, but how I navigated through those. I mean, sometimes, you see all these things on TikTok and Facebook, these fancy sayings and quotes and all these angles.
Yeah.
I don't have those. All I've known and what has repeatedly helped me and worked in my life has just been this constant, ongoing relationship with God and His grace on my life. In fact, I call grace, we'll probably talk about this later and run the scriptures, but I
Yeah.
call my little acronym for grace is God's rescue from a carnal existence.
Wow. Wow. I love
God,
that. That's
God's
powerful.
rescue from a carnal existence, because without His grace working in my life, I'd just be out there in my own natural mind and ability. But it was His grace and His love that called me, not necessarily to do this or to be this, but called me to Himself.
Yeah.
That's first and foremost. Called me to a relationship with Him. And it's from that relationship that everything for me stems and flows from.
Yeah. I love that, man. When I think of relationship, I always think of the prodigal son, and how the two sons, so the one son ran away and did his stuff, whatever, came back. It's like, felt so unworthy. And, hey, I just want to come in and be just work with the pigs. I want to be a servant. I don't even have to be a son. And of course, the father let him in. The interesting about the father is that he saw him
Yes.
far off. So he was waiting for him. He was watching for him. So anyway, so he welcomed back in. But then the other son, um, he was like, "Hey, dude, why are you giving him all the credit? He got a party, he got the fatted calf, you doing all this stuff. What about me? I did this, I did that, and he's listing all the stuff that he did. And it's interesting because in that story, to me, what I see is the relationship, just like you talked about there. It's the what all the stuff that they had access to was connected just to the fact that they were sons, not to
Yes.
what they had to do. So the father's like, you could have had all this stuff. You didn't have to go through
Right.
all of that. And I believe that that's what I believe that's what Jesus really came to show us, is the difference between being a son and being a servant. Because in the Old Testament, it's like service. Like, hey, was the creator. But in the New Testament, he's our father. He's our, Jesus trying to show that.
Yes,
So,
sir.
so you're right. So the servanthood, I mean, that mentality is completely different. Go ahead. You were gonna say something?
I was gonna say I love that story and what you brought out in it. And another side that I've seen in addition to that
Yeah.
is you mentioned relationship, and also see the timing and the context that gave weight to the um to the condition of each one of those sons.
Yeah.
Like the son who stood by and watched his brother come home, he was no less important than the other son. It's just that the timing and the context behind
Yeah.
that moment
Yeah.
was really important. You know what I'm
Sure.
saying? So, and
Sure.
I think there are times and contexts in our lives that vary, that causes us to have different interactions with people, and especially, more developed or varying degrees of interaction with our Heavenly Father.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, man. And you're right. So relationship is super important. I just thought about, and I love that story, and looking at there's so many different angles in there, but the grace, yeah, we'll talk about that later. I want to get into that, but here's the question. We talk about a few different things, experiences growing up and all that kind of stuff. Can you think of a story, that you might be open to share, where your faith played a pivotal role in, overcoming a challenge or an adversity? Yeah, I see it. So you're probably thinking of a few of them, huh?
Yeah, there's quite a few, but there's one in particular that
Yeah.
in my adult life that was really important and has been kind of like the gift that keeps on giving to me.
Okay.
And I had just gotten out of the service. In fact, everybody was asking me why I got out. I did
Hmm.
so well in it, and I was like, it's just time. I had
Okay.
some extenuating circumstances that I need to get out. So I looked for a job. I found a job, and I, I didn't. My occupation in the service was basically an administrative assistant. So I know I didn't want to do some of the jobs that they were, you know, proposing to me outside the service. So
Yeah.
I went and got, a job basically as an administrative assistant. Well, I was a part of this team that was doing demonstrations for government
Okay.
of new technology, and so they did live demonstrations. The demand for that died down, and they had to start doing these multimedia overviews
Okay.
that required them to use the creative arts and creative design software, which I had no
Hmm.
knowledge or base in.
Okay.
So I'm sitting at my desk one day, and my team lead comes to me and says, "Hey, man, we need to let you know that unless you learn how to do graphic design, in 2 weeks you're going to be fired."
Wow.
So I was saved, at that point again, walking a really decent, solid walk with the Lord.
Yeah.
I went home. I took leave for 2 weeks.
Mm.
Bought my computer, bought all the information that I need, books, tutorials. I sat at the kitchen table trying to learn how to do this stuff and put together a 13, maybe a 14 or 15-second little snippet.
Okay.
Took it in, showed him, and I never necessarily got the full credit for it, but the they ended up saying in the meeting, we want you to use the um the techniques and the practices that Danny used. That's what we want to do. That's what we want. That's where we want to go.
Wow.
So I was a little angry that I was put in that position. But through it, God showed me much later that if I had have been a little bit more spiritually minded and sensitive to the moment, I would have realized that that really was a blessing happening for me,
Yeah.
because I learned a trade, and that started a foundation of creativity in me, and being self-taught and learning some things that I never would have went in that direction for myself. And I saw the blessing of it later, because he used that to tremendously bless my life and my family, in
Okay.
so many ways.
Yeah.
And then he revealed talents in me that I had to be able to do multiple things that certain individuals in my group, they were limited to one or two things, but I could do all of it. And
Yeah.
I had no idea that. So he just basically showed me through that. My faith kept me through that, because I didn't get so angry to where, I said, well, forget this, I'm leaving. I said, Lord, I'm gonna trust you and I'm gonna do this. And I put my nose to the grindstone with his help, with his grace, and just went through it. And on the back end of that, he showed me that was me. That's a blessing in your life.
Yeah.
they don't always come wrapped with a bow.
Right, right. Yeah, sometimes they're hard to recognize. That reminds me of Joseph, and the things that he learned. In fact, we're studying with a small group Bible study that I'm in. We're studying the life of Joseph. And what stood out to me, well, there's a lot of great things that stand out about that, but the idea that all the things that he was going through were exactly what you're talking about. I mean, he had no idea. I mean, he was being trained for his end purpose, and he had to be able to interpret dreams. He had to be able to do administration. He had to be able to do all these things that he was forced to learn how to do. I mean, you get thrown in prison. It's like, okay, yeah, so what? I'm the lead of the prison, but I'm still in prison, dude. It's kind of funny when those the kings the what do you call him, the guy that tested his drinks, and the other
Oh
person
yeah.
came down there. Yeah.
Cupbearer.
And it's really funny. Yeah, it was really funny when Joseph saw them one day and he was like, "Hey guys, why are your face so down?" And I was thinking to myself, because we're in jail. That's why. That's why we're upset. But anyway, yeah. So it's interesting how those things, those challenges, could really be training in disguise. And like you said, you may not learn all the whys till way later on. You're like, man, that was God trying to teach me the whole time, which is great.
Absolutely.
Again, back onto God's grace. I mean, it's like, man, he's helping me. I didn't even know he was helping me, and he
Mhm.
was still helping. And I might not even appreciated it, right? So
Yes.
a
And
lot of
he
time,
showed me
yeah.
something in that too. Forgive me, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead, man. Go ahead. Go ahead.
He showed me something in that too about his grace, and I'm still really learning it now. And I've been constantly on. I mean, even now, day by day, just consulting him and seeking him concerning his act of grace in my life. And that
Sure.
is, he showed me that grace is not an exemption,
Okay.
it's an enablement, it's an enabling
Mm,
that
yeah.
allows you and empowers you to do more than what you could ever do on your own. And the picture that
Wow.
I've been working with is that, um, and I'm not gonna say it's gospel, it's just something that helps me.
Yeah.
Think of a person that's bench pressing.
Wow.
Because I asked the Lord one day, I said, Lord, how do I know your grace is working? I mean,
Yeah.
I hear it's unmerited favor, but Paul said in one of my favorite scriptures, which we'll get to later, Paul said
Yeah.
that grace was working, you know, in him. So how do I
Yeah.
know that the grace is working in me? How do I sense it? Because right now, Father, I'm not sensing it. So he gave me a picture, an image, and that was a bit person bench pressing.
Yeah.
He's bench pressing that weight, however heavy it is, and he's
Yeah.
doing all the things that he needs to do.
Yeah.
Has that spotter there, and the spotter is there, not taking the weight from him.
Yeah.
He's allowing that person doing the bench press to build up his muscles,
Yeah.
to get stronger, to do the exercise,
Sure.
but he's there saying, I got you. I'm not gonna let this fall on you. I'm not gonna let this hurt you. So when you're struggling to get that last bit up,
Yeah.
just like when you're doing that bench press, you can tell when that spotter comes in and
Yes.
helps
You
you
feel a
lift that up.
difference. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what he showed me. For me, what grace is. My grace will come and you will feel the difference. My grace works for you and it works with you.
Yeah.
As you are doing what you need to do, I'm there making up whatever difference when you can't finally get that thing to the bar. And I'm
Yeah.
always there as your spotter. I'm never going to let anything fall on and crush you.
Yeah, I mean, and I love that. That's similar. I feel the same way about and I saw it not necessarily with grace, but about Paul again when he was talking about how that he gained strength in weakness, and
Yes.
how that it worked so well that he was like, I'm cool with adversity because I know that God's power is gonna be there.
Imagine
And
that. Oh my
and
goodness.
well, it's great. And I asked the same question that you did, but I got the similar kind of a thought and an idea is that with the weightlifter. So a weightlifter, he's coming in there, the heavy weight to him is weakness at that time. But if he takes it and starts to work it, you know, then all of a sudden now he's gaining the perseverance and the resilience that makes it easier to lift. And now all of a sudden he gains strength in that weakness
Yes.
situation. And so it's just like what you're talking about. So it's like in life, those situations that seem tough and difficult. In fact, those are the ones that give you the most, that you gain the most in those failures. And I know people,
Yeah.
people don't like to say, oh, I don't fail, I fall forward and all that. I mean, I get that, but the bottom line is I'm in a challenge situation right now, and I'm trying to decide if I'm going to be able to handle it or not. And so just like what you said and what we're talking about here, what Paul said, is you look at that as an opportunity for God to show his power and his strength and spot you so that,
Right.
you just jump in there and he'll help you when you need the help, man. That is
Yes,
incredible.
sir.
I mean, how
Yes,
confidence boosting is that? It's like I could,
yes.
yeah, it's great. I love that.
You
So
mentioned something
yeah,
earlier, if I could say
yeah,
real quick.
absolutely.
It was back on the question about being stagnant
Yeah.
and how to handle that. And in those times when I was stagnant, God gave me the grace to and show me that you need to remain consistent
Hmm.
and you need to be patient.
Yeah.
It's like the right and left bicep.
Okay.
You know, patient and consistent, because so many times when we get in challenging situations or we feel in a rut, we stop.
Yes.
We quit. And I've been learning even now, as I deal with certain challenges that I hate, and normally challenges that will come with that would cause me to sit down and take a break from work or whatnot. The Lord has been saying, no, no, no. I want you to exercise. I
Yeah.
want you to be consistent, and I want you to be patient and just to keep going, because I'm working something in and out of you that
Yeah.
cannot be done any other way.
Isn't that
And that's
something?
just as much grace as anything else.
Yeah, and it's something how that, you could be God can teach you to take a situation like, like David, that Goliath came out, he was, ranting and raving, and those words drove fear and hopelessness in everybody else, but to David, that made him mad
Yes.
because he was like, are you kidding me? When the bear came, I dealt with him, and when the lion came, I dealt with him, but it was God in me that did that. So this guy is nothing compared to that.
Yes.
But
Yes.
it's the idea that it comes over time, and it's just how your perception of that. And like you're saying, God's teaching us all to view those situations as this is not, I mean, maybe it's a little bit difficult, but I empower you in those weak situations. I'll spot you. One of the other analogies that I like to think about is Google Maps, that God's plan for your life is like Google Maps. So it's like, so you don't have to be scared to take a step, because wherever you go, the directions will just get recalibrated from there.
Recalculated. I love that.
Yeah. So, because I
Yeah.
think, honestly, Danny, I think that the devil, I mean, it's all about trying to scare you so that you don't do anything. You just stay still, and so you, like you mentioned earlier, paralysis of the analysis. So I'm not doing anything. So now, you know, so you can't I mean, you're not getting what God has for you, but to have the confidence to just know, you know what, like you said earlier, I'm going to just go forward. I'm going to just move. And
That's
God
right.
will meet you there, and he'll show you
Right.
the next step, because you might not see it at first. You don't know that he's training you, but it's like once you start getting some of those wins on the board, now you're like, oh man, okay, cool. I remember the last time when this happened. Like David said, I remember the last time when the bear came, this what happened. The lion came, so I know I'm going to be able to deal with this guy. So interesting. But how have you dealt with doubts, man? Doubt and uncertainty when those things come up. I mean, what's your strategy for dealing with that? How do you deal with that?
Just flat out, I believe you can't deal with that on your own. You
Yeah,
can't deal with doubt on your own. You can't deal with doubt being untethered from the word.
sure.
I mean, because again, we're believers.
Yeah,
We're followers of Jesus Christ, and the Lord God, who has revealed Himself in Jesus and also through the Word. And
yeah,
so I deal with those doubts always by going and doing the same thing that Jesus did. The enemy came to him, and the first question he asked him, said, "If you be the Son of God,
yeah,
do this or do that." And Jesus responded again with, "It is written." That's where that is where my grounding is. That's where my hope is. That's where my expectation is at. And
yeah,
I used to kind of make apologies and admit apologies for that, because like, well, no, nobody want to hear about that. But you know what? You can't do that. This is a real world.
yeah.
We don't serve a fake, false God.
That's
He is
right.
real.
Yeah,
And there are some things that we're never, ever going to be able to get away to. Now, we can, you know, deliver them in a way that's more relevant, culturally and relevantly
yeah.
acceptable.
Sure,
But
sure.
sometimes you just have to say what it is. And for me, hey, I deal with those doubts. I go right to my Bible, I'll go right to the word, or the word that's in here.
Yeah,
Um, because he tells us that the seed of his word remains in us. I don't always, it's nice to see what's out here, but I
Yeah.
find myself more nowadays going inward to the Spirit of God which dwells in me and to my
Yeah.
relationship with him. And then there are
Yeah.
times you bring some things outward. But that's how I deal with doubt. I have word that I stand on.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense, man. I mean, that's where the power is. I mean, that's where the life is. I mean, and it's interesting. I think a lot of people think of the Bible as a book, but the Bible, it's a book about somebody, but it's not. The Bible's not a book about somebody. The Bible is somebody. Jesus,
Yes,
God
yes,
said, in the beginning was the word was with God, and the word was God. I mean, so him and his
yes.
word are one. You open the Bible and you're in his presence. You know what I mean? So you're right. You gotta, I remember one preacher said that, whenever he has an issue, he goes to his Bible. And somebody said, well, what if it's a real emergency? So, well, then I run to my Bible, so
I like that.
but it's all the word. That's where it comes from,
Yep, yep.
So now we've been talking about a lot of different scriptures here and there and quoting Paul and this one, that one. So tell me, man, what is the one Bible promise, man, that does it for you? And I think you sort of alluded to it earlier. What
Oh
is that
man.
one?
Yeah, you're gonna get two of them.
Okay,
Unfortunately,
give me,
the first one
yes,
is
I
First
love it.
Corinthians, I believe it's the 15th chapter and the 10th verse. It says,
Okay.
"But by the grace of God, I
Mm,
am what I am."
yeah,
And that grace that was bestowed upon me was not in vain. And I,
yeah,
I love that. But I labored more than all of them, but not me, yet not I, but the grace of God in me. And I
mm,
constantly go to that literally every day.
yeah,
Because doubt is going to come at you, second guessing is going to erupt within you.
yeah,
And one thing that is one of my main absolutes. Father God, I am, you've made me who to be, um, who I am by your grace.
yeah,
And it's only by your grace. So it's by your grace that's holding me up.
yeah,
Uh, and as I work, as I work more than all of them, but
yeah,
it's not me, it's the grace of God working in me. So I believe my whole life is a story of God's grace because I know I shouldn't be experiencing his goodness
yeah.
in ways that I'm experiencing it now because of just, Danny and his dumb stuff in the past.
Sure, 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 sure. And I love what you said earlier about grace not just being, I mean, everybody thinks grace, well, it's unmerited favor. Well, that's one of those, to me, that's one of those, that's the lingo that you learn, like blessed and highly favored. Well, no, it's enablement. Like you said, it's a supernatural enablement that allows you to do something that you couldn't do on your own. And
Yeah.
looking at that like that spotter, because yeah, absolutely. In fact, I'm doing some working out right now, trying to lose that stomach, man. It's interesting. Anyway, that's a whole other story. Trying to lose that. But you know, you when you're tired, like you said, if you're trying to do it on your own, you get a little bit extra help, man. That makes all the difference. And so God is
Yes.
there to do that. I love that. So man, it sounds like we might have to go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. What you gonna say?
No, just one other scripture that I have to say,
Absolutely.
and
Please.
that is in James, the fourth chapter, around the sixth verse. And it's just simply God resists the proud, but he
Hmm.
gives grace to the humble. So, whenever I'm working out in relationships, as we sometimes do,
Yeah.
or I'm on the road and crazy things happen, um, I'm just so appreciative that I'm able to have the Holy Spirit speak to me
Yeah.
and say, Danny, get it together. Danny, remember, my grace is for those who humble themselves.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to keep getting resisted, keep being proud. You know what I'm saying? So I go to that. Those are two scriptures I go to
Yeah.
every day because I want the tangible grace of God on my
Yeah.
life every day and everything that I'm doing. So
Yes.
I say that all the time.
I love that. One other thing I say, because we'll be all night talking scriptures, but that reminds me, another picture of grace to me. There was the story I heard about some kids that were doing a relay match. There's a bunch of small children, and so everybody was running to hand the baton off to the next group or whatever. But then there's last leg of people that were there, and everybody screaming and howling, waiting for the person handing the baton. So the one child handed the baton to one boy, and he started running the wrong way, and everybody was shouting and pointing, go the other way, but he was not even looking. He was just heading the wrong way, full steam. So then the coach runs out there. Coach runs out there, runs after the boy, picks him up, turns him the right way, and runs with him to the end. And to me, man, that's God's grace. That's God intervening. You know what I mean? So, but man, I know we've got the makings for a part 2, part 3. Oh my goodness. Danny, man, I appreciate your time. That time went really fast. I appreciate it. Yeah, let's figure out a time we can hook up again. Now, where are you at? You're in Indiana right now, right?
Well, right now I'm in Minnesota.
Are you really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, Maple Grove, Minnesota, right north of Minneapolis.
Okay, yeah, we used to live in the Maple Grove area, man.
Okay.
Yeah, interesting. We've been there for a while. Well, good. Well, we'll definitely, maybe we should grab some coffee or something.
Absolutely, would love to.
Okay. All right, cool, man. We'll do that. Well, thanks again for your time, my friend. And we'll wrap it for today. And we'll talk to you again real soon, okay?
Likewise.
All right, man. You take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye now. Hey, if you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more. Hey, thanks again for tuning in today. And until next time, stay aligned with God's promises and empowered by His word. We'll see you next time.